Years of warnings, it's finally here. The deadline to get that real ID. Starting on Sunday, if you don't have the real ID license or your passport, it's going to cost you extra to get on the plane. Chris Van Cleve explains what all travelers need to know.
When Raquel Washington flew to Las Vegas for her birthday in November, the New Jersey resident didn't have a real ID when she got to TSA.
They made it pretty easy for us to come through without our real ID. I think they just scan our fingerprints pretty much just to determine who we are.
But the next time she flies, she may have to pay the TSA $45 as part of the agency's new TSA Confirm ID program launching Sunday. Passengers with non-compliant forms of identification must go to a TSA website, sign up, and pay the fee before they can access security. But that fee is only good for 10 days. If I don't have a real ID and I don't pay this fee, will I be turned away at the checkpoint?
You could be in risk of not making your flight.
TSA Executive Administrator for Security Operations, Steve Lawrence. Why is it necessary to charge somebody $45 for this?
Absolutely. We want to make sure that the system is modernized. We want to make sure that we're covering down on the latest technology. We're also ensuring that in this situation, this cost is not bared by the taxpayers. This cost is bared by the individual that doesn't have a real ID compliant driver's license.
New signage with a QR code is going up at airport checkpoints. Flyers can pay on the spot at the airport if necessary. After years of delays, the TSA began requiring flyers to show a real ID, typically a driver's license with a star like this, or other approved forms of identification like a passport, military, or tribal ID last May. 94% of flyers have a compliant ID. TSA says they shouldn't see anything different. But for folks that have paid this fee, they advise allotting 15 to 30 minutes to get through security, more if you're going to do it at the airport on the spot. This is a clear effort to push people to get their real IDs as soon as possible. Chris Van Cleve, CBS News, Phoenix.
The first U.S. bank failure of 2026. On January 30th, Illinois regulators shut down Metropolitan Capital Bank and Trust in Chicago, citing unsafe and unsound conditions and an impaired capital position. The FDIC stepped in as receiver, and First Independence Bank of Detroit took over all deposits and most assets. For customers, there's no loss. Checking, savings, CDs, and retirement accounts are safe, and all services continue without interruption. The branch reopens as First Independence Bank, right where it was. The estimated cost to the FDIC's insurance fund? $19.7 million. Led by industry veteran Frank Novel, the bank's collapse shows how quickly regulators act to protect depositors. Want to understand more about why banks fail and how the FDIC steps in? Follow for deeper insights into the world of banking. What triggered the first...
Breaking news, a bank collapsed in Chicago and everyone says, relax, nobody lost any money.
Jesus Christ.
We should already know that they're all lying by omission. But here's the crazier part. Before regulators shut it down, before the FDIC press release, and before headlines, people on Polymarket were betting on a U.S. bank failure, and the odds were over 99%. Someone saw this coming, and someone got paid. And yeah, they recovered it fast. They had to. Last part's most important, because confidence is fragile, and once people start asking questions, it's over. Banks don't randomly fall in good economies. They fall when liquidity is tight, risk is mispriced, and stress is hiding behind fake optimism. This wasn't a crisis, it was a crack. And cracks are how this always starts. So let me know what you think in the comments. Is the federal government hiding more about our fragile banking system? We have...
My name is Josh Breslow, and I do want to get you right back to this breaking news that we are following coming in out of Minnesota. And first off, on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see there is yet another anti-ICE rally that is underway here as those demonstrators, about 100 or so, are gathered to line the streets. It's the same situation that we've seen happening over the past several weeks since the shooting death of Renee Good back on January 7th and the shooting of Alex Preddy 1 week ago today. Right now, what I want to do is pop this up on your screen and give you a closer look at that protest once again underway. A live image here as the protests, as federal judge there has denied the state of Minnesota's request to immediately stop the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement operation known as Metro Surge. Fox News reporting today's ruling says the state and 2 cities failed to meet high legal bar that's required to block a federal law enforcement operation at this stage of the case. Border Czar Tom Homan has been on the ground in Minneapolis since Monday as he's now heading up that immigration operation as a whole. Homan says he's met with state and local officials, including Governor Tim Walz and Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey. Homan explained that the administration's immigration mission would not change and the operation would not end. It would just be done in a safer way. Protests and demonstrations like this one, some of which have actually led to clashes between agitators and federal law enforcement, have ramped up following the January 7th shooting death of Renee Good by an ICE officer. And as I mentioned 1 week ago today, Alex Preddy was fatally shot by Border Patrol. After that, Commander Greg Bavino with Border Patrol was reportedly removed from Minneapolis as Holman was brought in. Now, the Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, during a Friday news conference, we played that for you about an hour ago, said that an investigation is being conducted into the shooting death of Preddy during that protest. Now, we are also getting, as I mentioned here, reaction coming in on the legal finding that came out just about an hour ago here. We have Mayor Frey of Minneapolis saying, of course we're disappointed. This decision doesn't change what people here have lived through: fear, disruption, and harm caused by a federal operation that never belonged in Minneapolis in the first place. This operation has not brought public safety, it's brought the opposite, and has detracted from the order we need for a working city. It's an invasion, and it needs to stop. Again, all of this developing here at this hour as we continue to learn just a little bit more about this lawsuit and what's going to happen here. A federal judge saying that she will not halt the immigration enforcement surge there in Minnesota and the Twin Cities as a lawsuit continues. Judge Catherine Menendez today denying a preliminary injunction sought in a lawsuit filed this month by State Attorney General Keith Ellison and the mayors of Minneapolis, Jacob Frey, and the mayor of St. Paul. It argued that the Department of Homeland Security is violating constitutional protections, and the lawsuit sought a quick order to halt the enforcement action or limit its scope. Lawyers with the U.S. DOJ have called the lawsuit, quote, legally frivolous. We'll keep you updated here as we get more reaction and more information coming into our newsroom.
It's very difficult to say, but I think you have to take it at face value at the moment because there isn't really any other information. The Iranian authorities are saying that they are gas explosions, but people are watching this very, very closely, especially in somewhere like Bandar Abbas, which is on the Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important maritime choke points in the world. 20% of the world's oil goes through there, 20% of the world's liquefied natural gas. So, you know, it can move markets. People look at it really, really closely at any time. But when you also factor in at the moment what's happening in terms of this American armada, this display of mass naval force moving into the region, about 30,000 to 40,000 US personnel there, carrier strike group, jets, you know, a significant show of power, people start to speculate. And it may very well be that they're not connecting the dots correctly, but, you know, that this region is on, you know, on tenterhooks trying to guess what Donald Trump will do next. Now, I think that show of force we're seeing fits into the pattern we've seen before. It is a classic case of gunboat diplomacy. We saw the same thing with Nicolas Maduro before he was snatched in Venezuela. And ultimately, the Trump administration is saying to the Iranians, negotiate when it comes to your nuclear program, change your behaviors, or else. That's the kind of gunboat diplomacy bit. We've heard from the Iranians, they're saying that they won't be coerced, and they are accusing the Americans of destabilizing the country and fomenting protests inside the country, but clearly an extremely nervous time across the region.
Welcome back. We are closely monitoring Iran this morning after several explosions have been reported there. And I wanted to put this up on your screen here. The Jerusalem Post saying 5 people were killed, 14 injured after a series of explosions were reported. Here's what we know. According to Reuters, at least 1 person was killed and 14 injured in an explosion in the southern Iranian port today. But the cause of the blast is not known at this time. Reuters says that social media reports alleging that a Revolutionary Guard Navy commander had been targeted in the explosion were, quote, completely false. Iranian media said the blast was under investigation but provided no further information. Iranian authorities could not immediately be contacted for comment as well. Now, separately, 4 people were killed after a gas explosion in a city near the Iraqi border. That's according to state-run Tehran Times. No further information was immediately available as well. 2 Israeli officials told Reuters that Israel was not involved in the blasts, which come amid heightened tensions between Tehran and Washington over Iran's crackdown on nationwide protests and over the country's nuclear program. The Pentagon did not immediately respond to a request for comment as well. Now, I wanted to share this on your screen. This is from President Trump days ago. As we do know that President Trump said on January 22nd an armada was heading toward Iran. We also heard him just say that in the Oval Office last night as well as he was taking questions from reporters. Multiple sources saying yesterday that Trump was weighing options against Iran that included targeted strikes on security forces. Now, earlier today, the Iranian president accused the U.S., Israeli, and European leaders of exploiting Iran's economic problems, inciting unrest, and providing people with the means to, quote, tear the nation apart. Iran's most important container port lies on the Strait of Hormuz, which is a vital waterway between Iran and Oman, which handles about 1/5 of the world's seaborne oil. The port suffered a major explosion last April that killed dozens and injured over 1,000 people. An investigative committee at the time blamed the blast on shortcomings in adherence to principles of civil defense and security. Iran has been rocked by nationwide protests that erupted in December over economic hardship and have posed one of the toughest challenges to the country's rulers. At least 5,000 people were killed in the protests, including 500 members of the security forces. So once again, just sharing this on your screen here as we closely monitor Iran this morning after we are getting reports of several explosions. We'll continue to monitor this here for you. In the meantime,
it also
there are rising tensions in the Persian Gulf tonight. The U.S. military has assembled a formidable force within striking range of Iran. Now President Trump must decide how to use it. CBS's Haley Ott at our London bureau has the latest. Haley. The American military is warning against, quote, unsafe and unprofessional behavior after Iran said it would be starting live fire drills in the Strait of Hormuz this weekend, as tensions in the region are sky high. On the streets of Tehran, things may look like they're back to normal. The reality is far from it. At cemeteries, Iranians are mourning their dead after some of the largest protests against the Islamic Republic in years swept across the country, and the regime's brutal crackdown killed up to tens of thousands of people.
If you do it, you're going to pay a price like that.
President Trump threatened to intervene if any protesters were killed. Now he's threatening military action if Iran doesn't negotiate over its nuclear program. To warn of the potential cost of that action, murals in Tehran put up by the government of coffins draped in American and Israeli flags.
They had guns.
It's a cost some protesters, like Zara, whose name we've changed to protect her identity, is willing to pay.
It's like chemotherapy. Yes, if there's some bombing, of course there will be casualty, and I'm very upset to even think of it.
Do you have a message to President Trump?
I just want him to keep his word.
Iran's president tonight, Tarika, said war is not in Iran's interest, in the interest of the wider region or the United States.
Haley, thank you.
Increasing pressure that the U.S. is putting on Iran over its nuclear program. What President Trump calls a U.S. naval armada is now in place, with Trump telling Tehran to make a deal to avoid possible military action. ABC's Patrick Reevell has more from London for us. Patrick, good morning.
Good morning, Whit. Yeah, the world is bracing to see if President Trump will use the force that he's amassed near Iran. The aircraft carrier, the USS Abraham Lincoln, and 6 destroyers are within striking distance. Yesterday, the president told reporters that he believes Iran wants a deal, but it's very hard, frankly, to see the country accepting his demands to give up its nuclear program and cap its missile arsenal. Iran's foreign minister said that it is ready for talks, but not while being threatened. And a top Iranian official also yesterday visiting Vladimir Putin, Iran's main ally. But it's still very unclear that strikes can actually achieve Trump's goals. Iran's regime for now appears to have crushed this month's protests, having killed many thousands, and some US allies are urging Trump not to attack. The president yesterday declining to say if there is a deadline for Iran to agree to a deal. Gio.
Yeah, there is so much talk about this. All right, Patrick, thank you so much.